Hello. Today I would like to talk about my life with a mental disorder called schizophrenia. I know that there's a lot of videos on the subject, lots of stories out there, lots of educational videos, etc. But the thing with this disease is that it's so diverse and can manifest itself in so many ways that everyone who has it has their own story to tell about it. There are, however, some unifying factors, namely delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech or behavior, as well as negative symptoms. I would like to explain briefly each of these symptoms and want to make it clear that the way these symptoms manifest can be very different from person to person. So let's begin with delusions. These are false beliefs, often not based in reality, that an individual may have about themselves or others. For example, a person who has delusions of religious nature may think they are the reincarnation of a holy person or a saint or something, sometimes even being God themselves. There are also persecutory delusions when a person thinks that they are being spied on, that some secret society is after them, and so on. In my case, I had moments when I firmly believed that a demon is trying to possess my body, and to this day I have the feeling that I'm being pursued by demons or some sort of monsters. Then there's hallucinations, is when a person perceives by one of their senses something that is not actually there. For example, some people see things that aren't there, others smell something that isn't there, or hear voices when no one's speaking. In my case, I experienced three types of hallucinations. Visual, I see monsters, shadow demons, people, even my dead cat on occasions. Then I have tactile hallucinations, and the best way I can describe this one is that sometimes I get a very unpleasant feeling of something cylindrical being pushed into my brain, like a baseball bat. It's not painful, but extremely uncomfortable. And I also experience auditory hallucinations in form of voices, often telling me negative things. Then there's disorganized speech or behavior. It can manifest itself as a word salad, a person saying something that makes no sense, or in some case of behavior, it can show as often involuntary movements, agitation, or the opposite, unresponsiveness. In my case, I often mutter to myself things that make no sense, or repeat a word or a sentence over and over without being able to stop myself. I also often rock back and forth and probably do other disorganized behaviors that I just don't notice anymore. Finally, there's negative symptoms. These are the reduction or absence of normal behaviors. For example, being less able to feel emotions, or being less motivated, more tired, or be able to feel things less in general. In my case, I feel less happiness and generally feel emotionally numb. I have a lack of motivation, sometimes even a fear of doing certain things, diminished energy levels, and a tendency to withdraw from social situations. And that basically wraps up the core symptoms of schizophrenia. Now, the reason why I would like to share my story is because I believe that despite it probably differing in many aspects from someone else who has the disease, I think I can still offer some sort of support for others with the condition, if only knowing they're not alone. It can be an educational video for the family, friends, and basically the close ones to the one with the condition, and it may help raise awareness and diminish the stigma associated with schizophrenia. Therefore, I would like to allocate a part of this channel to discussing the subject of mental health and schizophrenia, and in a way, kinda keep a vlog, I guess, of my life with it. And I will begin with the beginning. I was born some 28 long years ago. When I was little, I would go for the summer to the village where I would live with my grandparents for those 3 months. When I was 7 or 8, I was being bullied by some older kids in the village, but it happened during only 2 or 3 summers, so I don't consider it to be a particularly important factor in what could have caused me to develop schizophrenia. Also, a thing to note is that there is an important genetic component to the condition. Then, when I was 9, I immigrated to another country, which according to the DSM-5 and to my doctor could be one of the possible causes of the disorder due to the stress of the move, adapting to a new culture, new society, etc. But that either I never considered as being the reason I have it. I don't know, it sort of just happened. I can bash my head against the wall in hopes of finding out what caused for me to get the condition, but unfortunately we'll never know, and we can only guess. Anyway, I was 17 years old when I started experiencing my first symptoms. I was still in high school, if you will, although the schooling system is a little bit different where I live, and I began having trouble controlling my emotions. Typically, we can blame it on puberty, but I feel there's something more to it. More than that, I started hearing commands being given to me to hurt myself whenever I would feel sad or distraught, so I began cutting myself. Arms and legs. I remember one time a girl rejected me, and I remember hearing that if I don't hurt myself, things are only going to get worse. Of course, the voice didn't specify how it could get worse or even what exactly would get worse, but it insisted that it will. I think I just assumed that the negative emotions would feel worse. Um, Also, my wild imagination didn't help either, as I began thinking that she might tell our friend group that I would get outcasted, which is the greatest horror for a teenager. Nothing like that happened, and in fact, out of our entire friend group, that girl is one of the only ones I still remain friends with to this day, many years later. After that, shit really started hitting the fan. I began cutting myself in school sometimes. It was a sort of vicious cycle. I would do it, feel better for 20 minutes, then realize I feel worse, hear the command to do it more in order to feel better, and do it all over again. Years down the line, it really seems to have been a sort of addiction powered by an invisible, untouchable dealer of pain. Some tools I used to cut myself were knives, those construction ones, the very sharp box cutters, razors. I broke one of the razor thingy on my shaver to get the blade from it. I even used a sharp part of a pencil sharpener. At that point in time, I was hurting myself for reasons I don't even remember anymore. The only thing I can remember is the constant mental and emotional anguish. There was not a time when I didn't feel uncomfortable. I hated how I looked, hated the fact I was alive, and hated the person I was essentially. At my school, we happened to have that year a mental health review of sorts. I'm not sure how to call it, but basically they gave us questionnaires to fill out talking about our mental health. I was very honest. This landed me to a visit to the school counselor. She was the first person to whom I confided I was not doing well. I didn't tell her that I was hearing voices, and that is because I wasn't aware at the time I was hearing them. Now, when I think of those memories, I remember hearing them. In retrospect, I understand that I did, but at the time, it was all so foreign to me that I didn't even realize it wasn't my own head that was talking to me, like my own thoughts. I was certain that it was normal in a way, and it is important to note that the country I come from, mental health is not something really talked about. More like mental health problems get shoved under a rug and ignored. The serious cases get sent to the sanatorium, which are like prisons but they keep you high on meds. Very close to my birthday, which is in December, I began having full-blown crises. I would scream and attempt to hurt myself by any means necessary, whether it be by biting, cutting, or even hitting myself against the wall. This is somewhat uncharacteristic for someone with schizophrenia, and I'm not sure why I had them. It would just come over me like a wave. My theory is that I would do it out of the unconscious fear of the voices, because later on when I started seeing things, I would have these moments and be scared, curling up in a ball on the floor and cover my head. Anyway, these episodes got me out of college or high school. Like I said, the education system is different here. For the Americans, I was still in high school, but here I already had my high school diploma and was going to college type environment, which prepared us for university. During that time, I was first hospitalized in a children's hospital as I was still a minor, but then transferred to a hospital for adults because I was 1 week away from my birthday. So imagine how terrified I was at the time. I was technically still a minor, certainly felt that way, and was having serious bad shit episodes that not only scared me, and that putting it mildly, but also made me harm myself. And I was put in a psych ward of a hospital for adults. I remember getting there in the evening and someone, not a nurse or an orderly, I think it was another patient, telling me that everything is gonna be okay and that this place isn't as scary as I think it is, which tells me how scared I must have looked at the time. Anyway, that's about the only thing I remember from that week. I celebrated my 18th birthday, which I know for some is an important date, in a psych ward. The nurses were very kind. They got me a few bags of candy, some balloons, and sang me the happy birthday song to celebrate. Although the night shift nurse took the balloons away, deeming them dangerous, in retrospect, that day kinda laid down my path for the next 10 years, it being struggle with a mental health illness. Now you might ask yourself, where were your parents and family while this was happening? They were present. My mom and my aunt would visit pretty often when I was in the hospital, and they would bring me extra food. My dad was working abroad during that time, and I didn't see him much in the beginning. Overall, they were very supportive, despite not understanding what was wrong beyond just calling it mental illness. I feel that to this day they don't fully grasp what it is, but they still support me as much as they can, and I must say I'm very lucky to have a very united and loving family. We'll not talk much about how the life in the psych ward was. That would be a topic for another video, as I have a lot of things to say about it. Sufficient to say that it was overall awful, and that I have been misdiagnosed there. Instead of diagnosing psychosis, which is a symptom of schizophrenia, they concluded I had DID, or dissociative identity disorder. Both are characterized by a certain degree of delusions. It's just that their nature is different, and also auditory hallucinations are a symptom of DID in some cases. So I've been in and out of the psych ward for about 5 months, just in time for college applications to begin. And since I was pulled out of college without finishing my program, had to go do it again. I applied to a social sciences program at a college in downtown. In retrospect, it was a horrible decision, but I didn't know better. I just suffered an immense trauma and now had to quickly adjust to the real world. The reason why I chose that program and that college were, for one, the program didn't require any high math results, which I didn't get in high school, and two, a friend of mine was going to that college. Yeah, two pretty stupid reasons when it comes to choosing a place to study. I wasn't thinking too far ahead at that moment, and it's hard to do so when you had a life-altering experience I just had. I'll be honest though, the 2 years I spent in that program were pure bliss. I became friends with everyone, had excellent grades, loved what I was studying, and even got a girlfriend towards the end of it. And through all of it, I hurt myself only once, which was a big success for me. I felt that I was cured, to be honest, if only I knew that it was just a small break. At the end of those 2 years, I had to choose which university to go to. I chose pretty much one of the best ones in my city, and got in without any problems due to my excellent grades. This time, I chose a double major in psychology and English literature. Again, a questionable choice. University turned out completely different from college though. I knew no one, made only one friend over the 3 years I spent there, and generally felt like an outcast. Maybe that stress was the reason why my symptoms came back. Who knows? At the beginning of the first year, I was working as a hotel receptionist, and I began seeing things. It started with a little boy in the hotel's lobby who told me that he was actually dead. Then there was a really frightening instance when I was in my bed during the day, and I remember it was raining outside, and there was an old, decrepit hag standing in the corner of my room. She was just standing there, except when I closed my eyes. When I did, she got closer, and every time I would open my eyes, she would be back where she was. I don't know how much time has passed, but eventually my sister came and we went to get me a new phone. That's when the episode ended. The weird thing is, none of these instances made me think of telling anyone about them. Naturally, if some old creepy looking lady is standing in my room, I would call someone or at least ask her what she was doing there, but none of these reactions came to me. All I could do is just stare and be scared. These episodes cascaded into worse and worse hallucinations. I would see the sky being black during daytime, tentacles hanging from the ceiling of a tunnel leading from the subway to the university, different creepy creatures, and so on. I was hearing voices once again, but this time they weren't telling me to hurt myself. Sometimes they would just say gibberish to me, other times they'd comment on different things, such as what I saw or what I thought. I also started feeling that someone was putting thoughts in my head, and on occasion would really suffer some intrusive thoughts. One day it was raining and I was standing in the university campus and I realized something was not right and I needed help. You realize these things at some of the most random moments in the weirdest places, I think. So I went straight to the University Help Center for Students, got an appointment with a psychologist that same day, talked to him, he directed me to the campus psychiatrist. I spent the next 2 years seeing those two and going to the cognitive behavior therapy organized by the psychologist. I think I started taking medication again at that moment, but I'll be honest, I don't remember. At first, the doctor thought I had generalized anxiety, but after a while, he realized it was not it and directed me to an early psychosis intervention program. There, I met the doctor whom I see to this day. That time around, I for sure began taking medication. Risperidone was one of them, Abilify was another medication I started taking, Wellbutrin too, which is an antidepressant. Uh, Eventually, I got to Clozaril, which worked very well for my symptoms, but my studies were going down the drain. I began failing classes, partially because I couldn't focus on anything due to medication. I failed an introduction to poetry class and had to retake it. Almost failed my statistics class, but managed to get a good grade in the final exam, which saved me. But overall, things were not going well in school. And that's when another disaster struck. It was COVID times, and after taking the second vaccine against it, I had to go to the hospital again. My heart wasn't doing too well. That story I will also leave for another video, but at the end of it, it turned out that I had a cardiomyopathy, and so I was now condemned to take heart medication for the rest of my life. And Clozaril, the medication that worked best to treat my psychosis symptoms, had to be stopped as it could cause further issues with the heart. After that happened, I transferred to another university where I began studying translation, which is another bad decision. I seem to be good at making bad decisions concerning my education. For a time, I worked at a grocery store, had to quit because of symptoms. At some point, I worked at an optometrist office and also had to quit, but this time because of school scheduling. My life since then wasn't really eventful. I'd like to say that my symptoms have stabilized somewhat since then, but it's more of a ups and downs kind of situation. Stress also plays a big part in awakening my symptoms. My case turned out to be resistant to medication, and as of right now, I'm taking the max dose of antipsychotics, but I still experience a lot of hallucinations. Better than before, though, in a way, and I think that would be the last point for the video, but I see myself as a castle. The disease is an attacking force of darkness. The medication and therapy help me build the walls that protect me against the darkness, but on occasion, they still overwhelm the walls and breach them. In those moments, I usually feel completely unable to function, and I usually just spend half a day lying on a couch in sort of dumb stupor. I also have a lot of issues with self-image, with internal critic, being too hard on myself, and so on. But these topics would be for another video, as well as topic of medication too. There is a lot more I could say, but in this video I just wanted to show the path of my life up to now with schizophrenia. The script is already 6 pages long, and I don't know how long the video will be, but I don't want to make it too long. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll answer them the best I can.